Brian Terrian here. Managing your doctor's relationships to get your benefits approved and to keep your benefits is critical. You're about to listen to an excerpt from a conversation with another Brian who shares his experience with independent medical exams, how to manage your doctors and monitor your medical records. Hang out at the end of the video. I'll give you directions for 7 more tips to help you manage your doctor's relationships. Thanks.
So what I found, honestly, the difference to be was the person examining me when I went for the Social Security scheduled exams. And that's the God's honest truth. I went, on my first application when I went to a civilian doctor and, like, oh, okay, yeah, all right, and kind of got the vibe that he's not really that concerned. And then I hit 100%. And so when I went to my most recent one that they sent me to before this hearing, they wanted to, ended up, I'm trying to think what exactly I went for. I went for, I think it had to, I had to do it with my back. They wanted to check the range of motion and all that. And then she saw my application because I took documents with her, and she goes, oh, I seen you recently on the VA side. They acknowledged or diagnosed increase for your hips and stuff. And she said, well, they didn't ask for hip x-rays, but I'd like to take hip x-rays. She sent me down the hall, got hip x-rays, came back, and then her report to them was very inclusive. Like I said, she actually, when she saw what was listed under the VA side and, my knees and my hips and stuff, she asked had I ever been x-rayed for my hips. And I said, yeah, yesterday or whatever. And she said, okay, well, the results aren't here yet. She said, if you don't mind, if you're not opposed to it, I actually want to send you down the hall to get more x-rays. So for me, what I think, honestly, the big deciding factor was I had a non-biased medical person that wanted to look at the actual evidence and the actual injuries or disabilities and rate them honestly according to that, and took an interest in it and wanted to help out or do the right thing, whatever you want to call it. Do I think previously I was just another person passing through the door that they had to fill out paperwork for?
That is fantastic advice, and yes, I
And we
would like
can't
to.
control that, unfortunately.
Well, okay, it to some degree, but what
Yeah.
what I encourage anybody that's, and yes, I do want to use that piece. That's fantastic. But for anybody that's listening out there, when you go to one of these independent medical exams, like Brian has, there are like 7 things that you can do to influence it because it is critically important, as you have said. I mean, if she didn't give you that good evaluation, am I correct in understanding it would have had a different impact on your case and the outcome?
I believe so. Every time I went to a physician, for an evaluation, I always took a voice recorder with me
Mm-hmm.
to get the entire conversation in case something came up that I felt they didn't give me a fair shake on.
Yep.
And I always brought any documentation to them and said, hey, this is what the VA has rated me at. If you're interested in looking at it. The most recent one, the one that evaluated me prior to approval, she absolutely wanted to see it, and she read it, and that's where she decided, based off of this, I want to send you over for hip x-rays.
Mm-hmm.
I went to other physicians previously on the denial application, and I said, I have, what all my rated disabilities are with the VA, and they were like, oh, okay, you can leave them here. We'll take a look at them, and you kind of got the vibe they weren't interested and weren't going to.
Yep.
So for me, it really, she looked at them, was interested, and said, okay, great, that helps me with my decision on what disabilities you have. And so since
Mm-hmm.
she has no say in whether it's approved or not, she gave her honest opinion of what disabilities I had. Then it was up to Social Security, the judge, to decide if I was met their requirements. But
Mm-hmm.
I strongly believe the evaluator is a huge factor in how things go for you.
Mm-hmm. So you brought your medical records and your VA rating, and you recorded it. Did you go alone?
Yes, my wife was working, so she wasn't able to go.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. All right. That would have been the trifecta if you would have had somebody else
Yeah.
there, but
Mm-hmm.
it sounds like it worked
Right.
out. No, that's super advice
Would
there.
also say if you're going to take a voice recorder, find out if your state is a one-party or two-party consent. And ethically speaking, if it's a one-party, you can ask them if they mind you recording it. But if they say no, then now you don't have that recording. A
Mm-hmm.
one-party consent state, leave it in your pocket and record it. A two-party state, well, unfortunately, you'll have to ask for their permission, and a lot of them will say
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I actually I just had a conversation, an interview with Mike in Texas, and he had the similar thing happen to him. He asked, and the guy totally freaked out. He didn't know what to do, so he went asking all of his superiors, and finally
Yeah.
came back and they said no. But yeah, you
Yep.
can do a simple internet search and find that out. But no, that's good advice to keep them out of trouble. You definitely
Yes.
don't want to irritate somebody, that's for sure, when you go into one of these. So you don't want it to go south on you. So,
Yeah, and I felt like that for me. I thought long and hard. If I ask, it may irritate them, and so being a one-party consent state, I made my final decision to just leave it in my pocket with it running, and
yep,
hopefully no issues would come up that it wouldn't be a problem, and nothing did. So,
yeah,
nothing became an issue. But
hmm
um, you still got to protect yourself or whatever in that situation.
right, right. And for those of you listening out there, if you do have a recording, you can submit that as evidence, and the value in that is if the independent medical exam is not consistent with what the written report is, you have some support, you have some evidence. So, an example would be, and if you've got something to add to this, Brian, let's say that they went through and they did an evaluation of your hips, and they wrote that all down. But in actuality, they didn't do it. They didn't test for flexibility or mobility or any of that. They just wrote it down. So that would be just one example like that. So,
I
um,
totally, what you just mentioned, I ran into on the VA side, not the Social Security side. Went back and read my medical records, and they said, they had, whatever it was, they had, checked my feet, whatever, and I was like, wow, that never happened. And it's just like, exactly what you said, the evaluation and the report didn't match. I've
yeah,
had where they asked me, I had like a 3 o'clock appointment. I had to immediately get out of there and get back to my side of town to get my kids from school. And she goes, do you have time to go by the lab and get a flu shot? And I said, no, I don't have that extra 10 minutes or whatever I got to get in my car to go get my kids. I can't do it today. So I went back and reviewed my medical records a couple days later, and she put in there, patient refused to get the flu shot. And I was like, I didn't refuse. I told
use
you I
it.
didn't have time.